All right, okay. Right, after a full start. Good evening, members. Good evening, members of the public. Good evening, officers. Good evening, anybody that has joined us on YouTube. Welcome to the Planning Applications Committee for 8th of December. Firstly, should we have the fire instructions?
Thank you, Chair. There will be no fire drill tonight. The fire alarm is a loud, continuous ring. If you do hear that a loud, continuous ring, please leave the building promptly and calmly using the stairs next to the lift, if possible. The fire escape in the council chamber should only be used as a last resort. Please do not stop to gather personal belongings and do not use the lift. The evacuation point is at street level in the Knoll Road multi-storey car park, and the assembly point is indicated by a green sign. Please do not leave the assembly point until you are told that it is safe to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we have apologies, please?
We've had apologies from Councillor Whitcroft and Councillor Lewis, and Councillor Skipper is substituting for Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to you, Councillor Skipper. Mr. Chenier is normally with us, but he's on Zoom tonight, and he was there, he's disappeared. Are you agreeable that I sign the minutes of the last meeting, members? Thank you. Declarations we will deal with on each item. It takes us through to the first item on page number 5, land south of Heath Cottage, West End. Members, are there any declarations to make? I'll go firstly that we have received, I assume everybody's received it, a letter of objection. I think everybody received one. Are there any other declarations to make? Councillor Allaway?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to say that I've met and listened to residents' concerns on this matter, but open-minded for the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Noble?
Thank you, Chair. I've also met with both the applicant and the fellow residents, and I come to this meeting with an open and clear mind.
Thank you. I am aware you called this item in, and I'll come back to you on that one. Any other declarations? No. And then over to you, Mr. Rahman. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There is an update to report on this one in respect of reason for refusal number 1, which has been amended to refer to reasons 2 to 7 and not reasons 2 to 5. The application relates to a parcel of land south of Heath Cottage, Priest Lane in the West End. The site is accessed via the Priest Lane bridle path with residential developments. The site is accessed via the Priest Lane bridle path with residential developments found to the north and northeast of the site, whilst open areas of land are found immediately to the south and west. Further southeast is occupied by the MOD as a firing range, whilst Brentmore Heath and Follybog Nature Reserve are sited further north of the site. The site falls within Greenbelt land within the 400-metre SPA exclusion zone and sits adjacent to Flood Risk Zone 2. These are some views of the existing bridle path. This is used predominantly by cycle, pedestrian and equestrian users. Vehicle users are restricted unless permission is granted by the MOD. This shows the area to the front of the site, which is heavily waterlogged. And this is the rear of the site, which doesn't suffer from the same waterlogging issues to the same extent. An existing shelter has been erected on site for use by horses. The application seeks a change of use of land from agricultural to equestrian with the construction of a stable block comprising of 2 stables, a tack room and shelter, the siting of a caravan for use as a day room, and the installation of an area of hard standing. The proposed stable and caravan would be sited towards the rear of the site and the hard standing to the front. This shows the proposed plans and elevations of the stable. And here are the plans and elevations of the caravan. Officers raised concerns with respect to the siting of the caravan on site. The proposed caravan is stated to be used as a day room and for storage of horse equipment. However, officers consider that these could be provided as part of the stables building, and no justification has been provided as to why a separate structure would be required on site. The proposed caravan could provide adequate habitable accommodation, and given the site falls within the 400-metre exclusion zone of the SBA, officers are not satisfied on the basis of the submitted information and detail that this would not be used for residential purposes, which would be contrary to the integrity of the SBA and represent inappropriate development within the Greenbelt. The proposed development would also be considered harmful to the openness of the Greenbelt and rural character of the surrounding area, resulting in the introduction of permanent buildings and associated traffic and activity to an area of open undisturbed land. No very special circumstances have been presented to override this harm. Officers also raised concerns regarding the appropriateness of the site for the welfare of horses in respect of sufficient grazing land, the quality of the land, absence of poisonous plants, distance to the MOD firing range, and lack of detail regarding fencing, as well as failing to meet the minimum standards required for stables. Further concerns are raised in respect of the safety of users of the bridle path, with insufficient detail provided in respect of how the site would be serviced and the type and frequency of vehicles, particularly given the site does not benefit from a mains water supply. Officers raised additional concerns in respect of drainage, harm to trees, harm to ecological and biodiversity assets in the surrounding area. Considering all matters, officers therefore recommend the refusal of the application for the reasons set out in section 10 of the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We have 3 public speakers on this item. I'll do it now to save me repeating it 3 times. Speakers, you will have 4, I'm sure you've been told this, but I'm doing it from here. You will have 4 minutes and you will be given a notification of 1 minute before, or at the end of the 3rd minute, when I get it right. And if you could remain where you are, please, for any questions of a planning nature from the committee. First up, Mr. Bourne. Thank you. The time will start whenever you're ready, Mr. Vaughan.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tony Vaughan and I live at Heath Cottage in Brentmore Road, West End. My garden overlooks the boundary with the application site being decided this evening. I would like to thank the work of the Surrey Heath Planning Officer for producing a detailed delegation report which clearly shows the issues with the proposal in a planning context. These are in line with my own and my fellow residents' concerns about what the landowner has attempted to achieve, all under the guise of animal welfare towards the keeping of horses. There are a few more points I need to put on record and bring to the attention of the committee members, which are linked to planning policies and law. The Town and Country Planning Act 1990 often works in conjunction with other acts which have evolved over many decades to control appropriate development, to protect the land and environment, to uphold the rights of residents and the wider public interest by means of planning enforcement. In my opinion, the landowner of this site has other agendas for its use, which are not linked in any way to the keeping of horses and for the welfare of any horse kept on the proposed site. I know this because I was told directly by a member of the applicant's family and the owner of the adjacent plot. I quote, "If the interfering from you and your neighbours stops us getting planning permission on our land, then we will put 20 traveller families in the field. There will be nothing that you or the council could ever do to get them off the land once they are there." I am willing to swear under oath that these words were said directly to me by a member of the applicant's family regarding the application site and the adjoining plot. The site has been and is still being used unlawfully with the keeping of horses and a horse shelter, which goes directly against a refused certificate of lawfulness issued by this council on the 1st of October 2019 under application number 19/0507. This goes against the Town and Country Planning Act and local policy. Planning enforcement has had to deal with a number of incidents on the site regarding the importation of commercial waste, fly tipping, and the burning of imported waste. This goes against the Town and Country Planning Act, the Environmental Protection Act, and local policies. I ask the committee to support the planning officer's recommendation to refuse permission. After all, he is the expert here. I also urge that the welfare of horses is not solely considered. This application is about a large concrete hardstanding, a flooding risk, installation of a cesspit, lack of access, buildings in the greenbelt, caravans capable of residential living, and fundamentally the turning of a greenbelt agricultural land close to Brentmoor Heath, a site of scientific interest and a special protected area, into a residential building plot. Please uphold the recommendation to refuse. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Vaughan. Some of the content is not strictly planning, but hey. Members, I'm sorry, Councillor Wheeler and Councillor Gordon, unfortunately, as you were delayed and couldn't be at the start of the meeting, you cannot take part in this item, and that is in terms of the Constitution.
When the application should be heard, withdrawn. This application was withdrawn on Tuesday. Why call it on Tuesday?
I have no knowledge of that whatsoever.
I had a phone call myself with the applicant in front of me on Tuesday morning. We called for him about half an hour and the applicant withdrew the application.
Well, any applicant would need to withdraw an application in writing, and there's no indication whatsoever that that has happened.
In the absence, the planning officer has stated quite clearly, in the absence of formal writing, notice in writing which has not been received, the consideration of the application will proceed. But thank you for that. Members, do you have any questions of a planning nature for the Speaker? No. Thank you very much indeed, Mr Vaughan. And it's now Mrs Vallner, please. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jane Vallner. I also live in Brentmoor Road, up the track which adjoins the junction of Priest Lane and Brentmoor Road. Until the horses arrived, there was hardly any traffic, and the bridleway was a safe place to walk or cycle, particularly after the metal gates were installed. I fear that if planning permission is given, there will inevitably be an increase in vehicle traffic to service the site, and the turning point will be blocked by the applicant's vehicles more often. I would also like to thank the planning officer for his considered report recommending refusal. He is the council's employed expert, so I hope the committee will support their own expert's report and recommendation. I thank my neighbour for his words and would like to expand on a few points he has made. The proposed site is unsuitable for horses as it does not meet the requirements of legislation which governs the keeping of horses, including the Animals Act 1971, the Animal Welfare Act 2006, the Ragwort Control Act 2003, and the various codes and guidance relating to ragwort. Ragwort is an invasive weed which is highly toxic to horses if ingested. Firstly, the application site is too small to keep horses. It is only 0.84 of an acre, and the minimum requirement promoted by law is 1.25 to 2.5 acres of good quality grazing land per horse. Available grazing would be reduced by the erection of the planned buildings, the caravan and the hard standing, and there is no way the site could be declassed as good grazing. There is also a legal requirement to store horse dung safely to prevent pollution of the land and waterways. There is no reference in the application to a designated area for this, which would reduce the available grazing further. The site is also unsuitable for keeping horses as it gets waterlogged frequently. The applicant himself admits that the southerly area to the front of the field can get quite boggy and floods in the winter. I would agree with him. The site has a natural drainage route dissecting it and connecting to the source of the River Bourne. The Ordnance Survey map shows this natural drainage route. The applicant wants to install a hard standing for the horses to retire to, which would displace the standing water, and has put forward no plans to reduce the volume and rate of surface water runoff to an appropriate drainage system as required by the Surrey Heath Core Strategy and Development Management Policies document 2012. It is not clear from the application how much of the site will be covered in concrete and how big the cesspit and the caravan will be. I fear that if planning permission is given, a very rural area within the Green Belt will become urbanised, harmful to the openness of the Green Belt and its aims. Supporters for this proposal claim there are insufficient stabling facilities in the West End village area. This is incorrect. There are several stables in the area with immediate availability. Fence Farm Riding Centre and Rosedene Stables, less than a mile away, Windlebrook Stables, Higher Park Farm Liveries and LGB Equestrian Riding School, less than 2 miles away. In conclusion, horses require good quality grazing land with at least 1.25 acres per horse, land that is well drained and free from toxic weeds, and we have a legal duty of care, not only towards our animals, but also to protect the Green Belt, sites of special scientific interest, special protection areas with their 400-metre buffer zones, and the wildlife which inhabits these areas. This planning application does not fulfil these criteria, and I ask the committee to support the recommendation to refuse it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Vellner. Members, any questions of a planning nature? No, thank you very much indeed. Now, I have on my list, but I'm not sure if she's here, Mrs. Richards. Mrs. Richards, are you here? Yes, Councillor Gordon.
Mrs. Richards hasn't come because she thought the application was withdrew. So I know you said it wasn't, but together on Tuesday when we phoned up first of all, the officer we spoke to on planning told the pair of us quite clearly that they would pull the application before tonight time. So she hasn't arrived for that reason.
Right, well, we have no knowledge of that, and as I said, we will proceed with this. Councillor Noble, you called this in. Would you please kindly explain to the committee whilst you did that, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I called this application in as I was aware of the proximity of the field within the Green Belt. I was also aware that this was a change of use request, and I was also aware that there was elements of previous disagreement between the applicant and other members, other neighbours. So I wanted the application to be heard with a fair viewpoint. I was aware that the applicant did want to withdraw the application because I had a conversation with Councillor Gordon on Tuesday on this point before he was going to make the call with the applicant.
Right, thank you. It's a shame that that communication did not reach the planning officers, so we are obliged to continue with the consideration of this item in the absence of any... Yes, Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate, and I'm not commenting directly on the application. I just wonder if Councillor Gordon is familiar with which planning officer he spoke to, in which case I think there is a risk that maybe my fellow councillors might choose to request for this hearing to be adjourned so that that matter could maybe be investigated.
I never thought your many skills included mind reading, but clearly I misunderstood you. I think it's a very fair point.
Yeah, I don't really have any further comments from what I've already said. Any application to withdraw must be in writing, but given the confusion here, it seems sensible.
Yeah, I think that this is one that we will defer for further investigation because of the doubt. Councillor Allaway?
Thank you, Chair. Would anything that's likely to be said change any of the contraventions of this application to the laws and the officer's recommendations? Because I think it's a very comprehensive report and I can't see it being overcome by anything that the applicant might like to say.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, Councillor Allaway, but I think in we do have to, there is some doubt. There were two councillors who believed that this item was going to be withdrawn. Thank you. And I think in fairness, in openness, and I think it is beholden on us whether we can't prejudge the application yet as we haven't listened to it all, but I do believe that this item should be withdrawn. And actually, I'm looking at the head of planning. I don't know if Mr. Chenier, do you want to come in on this at all?
Thank you, Chair, and sorry, and apologies, but I can't be in the chamber this evening. I mean, it'll be down to obviously members to decide if they want to defer or withdraw this application from the planning committee. Coming back to Councillor Wheeler's question, could Councillor Gordon just specify if an officer was spoken to about this?
I haven't got the information to hand, but I called the main switchboard on... Okay, I don't appreciate my integrity being questioned in the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. Right, members, I think the Vice Chairman, as Chair, I'm going to put to you that this item is deferred until the next meeting so that this can be investigated further. I believe, is the Vice Chairman seconding that proposal? The deferral. Are you going to second my suggestion of deferral, Vice Chairman? Oh, you can't, sorry.
I can't.
No, you can't. Gosh, I like that. I didn't say that. Does anybody wish to second that? I mean, we need to come to a decision on deferral. Councillor Black. Members, are you in agreement that this item is deferred for further investigations on the potential confusion outstanding matter? Right. Against that proposal?
Sorry, go through that again. I didn't count. Sorry.
Councillor Allaway, Councillor Barnett, Councillor Betton, Councillor Tupper, Councillor Skipper, Councillor White.
On which basis, members, we will continue with the deliberation of the item. Members, over to you. Any questions for the officers? Right. We have a recommendation, members, to refuse. Is there a proposer and a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Betton and Councillor Tapper. Are all those in agreement with the recommendation to refuse?
That's Councillor Allaway, Councillor Barnett, Councillor Betton, Councillor Black, Councillor Noble, Councillor Perry, Councillor Ratteram, Councillor Tapper, Councillor Skipper, Councillor White.
That's unanimous. That's unanimous. Just for the clarity, and against, I think we've got everything. Members, that is unanimous decision to refuse. Thank you. Interesting. Members, on to the item on page 31, Reef House Snows Ride, Windlesham. Are there any declarations to make on this item? No. Then again, it's Mr. Rahman. Thank you. I should just give him a second to clear.
Thank you, Chair. There is an update to report on this item also, with 2 representations received as part of the public consultation exercise, one stating an objection and the other providing comment on conditions in the event of an approval. Condition 5 in respect of the CEMP and informative 6 in respect of highway matters have been amended to provide greater clarification on highway matters. The application relates to Reef House, Snows Ride, Windlesham. The application site is a plot of land measuring 0.9 hectares in size, situated on the eastern side of Windlesham Court and falls within the Greenbelt. The site comprises a mansion and detached 2-storey ancillary building surrounded by a mature woodland landscape to the boundaries. The surrounding area has examples of similarly large properties with a mixed architectural context. These are some existing views showing the front of grounds with the mature tree frontage. Again, photos of the front of grounds showing the front elevation of the property, as well as the ancillary building on the right-hand side in context of the main dwelling. These photos show the rear of the site with a large soft landscaped garden and mature trees to the boundaries. The proposed development seeks the demolition of all buildings on site and the construction of a replacement dwelling and ancillary building. The Council has received no objections from Surrey County Highways, the Council's urban design consultant, the arboricultural officer, environmental health, nor Surrey Wildlife Trust. The proposed site plan shows the existing buildings overlaid in red, highlighting the relatively similar position of the developments. Again, the proposed front and rear elevations are shown here with the existing buildings overlaid in red, and the ancillary building here showing to have a similar 2-storey height to the existing. The proposed ancillary building, owing to its overall scale and design, would retain an ancillary appearance to the main building and is of a design that relates acceptably to the main building. The application is considered acceptable in principle, resulting in the replacement of an existing dwelling within a residential setting. The MPPF sets out that the replacement of a building, provided it is in the same use and not materially larger, would be considered an exception to development within the Greenbelt. Officers consider that the proposed increase in development would not be significant, falling below the 30% guideline figures typically considered acceptable for development within the Greenbelt. From a spatial perspective, the proposed roof form helps to break up the mass, with the height of the development largely decreased relative to the existing main building, with the increase contained to the central pediment figure. In addition, the width of the building would be reduced whilst the position remains similar to the existing. The site is enclosed by a mature woodland setting, and the proposed dwelling ancillary building would not be considered significantly more so noticeable from its surroundings. Officers are therefore satisfied that the proposal would accord with Greenbelt policy and not result in undue harm to the openness of the Greenbelt. The proposed design of the development takes a neoclassical approach and would be considered to have an attractive, high-quality appearance, which is supported by the Council's urban design consultant. The proposed development would therefore be considered acceptable in principle in accordance with Greenbelt policy, being of a high-quality design and being of a scale that is appropriate to its plot size. It would not result in any significant adverse amenity harm, whilst providing a good standard of accommodation and raising no significant issues in respect of highway matters and biodiversity. Officers do recommend that permit development rights are removed to ensure that no disproportionate additions are constructed on site that could potentially harm the openness of the Greenbelt. Subject to the appropriate conditions, officers recommend the committee grants approval today. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Wheeler, you called this in. Can you please say why? Thank you.
I did, thank you, Chair. Really, it's the percentage increase that is in relation to this property, given its Greenbelt status. Having obviously met with officers and discussed it further, I appreciate that the percentage increase is not something that is felt, in their professional opinion, to have an adverse impact on the building, and in fact the existing building that is there is not terribly attractive. That said, I do have concerns for the neighbours in terms of the development period, and I haven't, on the update that I've received, I haven't seen a variance to the fact that I would be very keen that all parking is on site, that a no turning further down the road is instigated. So a slight addition. If I fail to see those updates and they're somewhere that I haven't had access to, I apologise. I know, thankfully, I've had the opportunity to discuss them. Also, for all waste material to be removed from site and not left on site to bring about any enhanced raising of the land. And also just clarification, because there was a slight duplication of fact between burning. So one limited the burning hours and the other one said no burning. So if we could have clarification that there should be no burning during the construction period. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. In respect of condition 5, we've added that the parking of vehicles for site personnel, operatives and visitors are restricted within the curtilage of the site, as well as the loading and unloading of plant and materials to be restricted within the curtilage of the site, storage of plant and materials within the curtilage of the site. So hopefully that has gone to cover some of those issues, as well as an amendment to informative 6, which asks for the applicant to ensure that sufficient space is provided for construction traffic to turn and leave the site in a forward gear, so they would not have to turn away from the site. Any parking as well of construction vehicles is to away from the boundary of Windlesham Court. In respect of the removal of waste and not being left on site, we can look to add another informative if members are minded to do so. And in regards to the burning of materials clarification, I believe it's condition 6B, which references no burning of material within 6 metres of the trees. So that's a condition in reference to the trees. And then the last condition on the report as well references no burning at all. So it's simply a case of one condition refers to trees and solely considers that impact, whereas the other condition refers to the site as a whole. That can be clarified if necessary. It would just mean we amend condition, I think it's 6, to remove that element of burning. Thank you.
Thank you. I would be grateful if that could be clarified. I think it may just be me, but if ever I'm reading a condition, I only ever read the condition that gives me more flexibility. So I think if we could just have the no burning on site, the other one presumably is not necessary. And I would be grateful if we could add the informative about the removal of waste products as a result of the demolition. Thank you. I have to say, if we're minded to accept those 2 amendments, I would be very happy to propose this development.
I think the committee feels in agreement with Councillor Wheeler on those 2 informatives as discussed, so we can incorporate those, if I may speak for the committee. Members, are there any other comments to make? If not, there is a proposer. Can I have a seconder for the application? Councillor Betton, all those in agreement? That's unanimous. Yep. Thank you very much indeed, members. That takes us to the item on page 59 of the agenda, 107 College Ride Bagshot. Declarations on this item, please. Councillor White.
It's just that I've been in correspondence with the neighbours. I haven't met with them, I'm only in correspondence email.
Thank you. Anybody else? No. Thank you very much, Ms. Turney.
The application is at 107 College Ride in Bagshot. So the application seeks planning permission for the erection of a rear dormer and sky window to the front elevation. The application site is located within the settlement area of Bagshot. The surrounding area on this side of the road is residential, with the immediate surrounding dwellings are of a modest size and have long rear gardens. So these are some images of the front of the site. So this is the application site here, this semi, and then this is the application site from the rear. The 2-storey projection to the rear is an extension from the 80s, and the single-storey extension is a more recent addition. The site history is important when considering this proposal. As set out in the committee report, the application site has permission for a rear dormer which falls under permitted development. For reference, I've provided the elevations which show the rear dormer. I'd therefore ask members to have regard to this when considering the proposed application as I go through the presentation. So that's just the slides there. You can see the rear dormer and the side elevation. This is the proposed elevation of the dormer, which extends above the existing two-storey projection. So the purple line here is the PD dormer, and then they're seeking to gain an additional 1.5 metres in depth. It is the officer's opinion that the PD dormer, if built, would already dominate the rear roof slope of the dwelling. This submission would seek to enlarge the PD dormer by only additional depth of 1.5 metres. In the officer's opinion, this additional depth does not significantly change the dormer's dominance within the context of the main building or the street scene due to the location set back from the highway. I've repeated this image in the top right corner here as due to the location of the dormer being set behind the existing two-storey pitched roof projection. Visually, when viewed from the dwelling's rear garden and the neighbour's garden, it would also not be overly visible. The proposed roof lights would protrude forward 0.4 metres from the roof slope. It is not considered these would dominate the front roof slope to result in harm to the character of the area. Now I just included the floor plans and just see they'll be extending out the room at the top. This image is the view of the existing first floor rear windows of the application site, which provides views towards the application site's rear garden and the neighbour's garden. This relationship is common within built-up areas. While the proposal would add additional glazing at a higher level, it's the officer's view that it would provide a similar relationship to the existing first floor windows as shown in this photo. Overall, it's the officer's view that the privacy of the neighbouring properties would not be unduly compromised compared to the existing situation. As mentioned previously, the PD dormer could also be constructed within the rear elevation, which would provide additional glazing, and I'd therefore ask members to take this into consideration. The application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to conditions.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor White, you call this in. Can you please say why? Thank you.
I did, for the simple reason that residents don't feel that their objections are heard or looked at properly. So I would just like to reiterate the residents' objections, which are, they don't actually object to the conversion of the existing loft, but they do object to the dormer at the rear of the property. They have no problem with the one at the front because that just looks onto trees and fields. It will reduce the amount of light into the living room through the only window. Previously objected to the dormer proposed in previous application, and the one proposed in this recent application is even bigger. And they just wondered, is the other application going to be heard, or has that been withdrawn? They also say that the windows at this height and position give potential overlook to parts of the property in the garden. And you can see from one of the pictures that you can actually see into the gardens, but these are the ones you'll be able to see nearer to the house, sorry. They feel that the actual dormer is not in keeping with the other two cottages, groups of cottages. There's 4 cottages there. In the agent's report, they put these down as Victorian villas. They're not, they're 2-bedroom cottages, and everybody's kept them as to that, and they just feel that the dormer is going to be not in keeping with the other cottages that are there. Saying that, they would like additional points made that if this does go through, that no building work can be carried out at weekends or before 8 p.m. or after 5 p.m. Monday to Friday, and netting to be placed all around the scaffold to limit the amount of dust and debris, and any skips to be placed on the hedge side of 107's driveway, again to limit the amount of dust and to avoid the risk of any damage to the vehicles that are parked on the neighbour's drive, obviously the next door neighbour. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor White. Can I just pick up those last 2 points of yours, which I notice are on the representations on page 60. I certainly was, and I note the officer comments, but I think that those 2 points, the building works and the skips, could be put, I'd request that they were made to be put to an informative as part of the documentation, and I think that has been accepted. Can I, on the other points, Ms. Turner, do you have any comment to make? Sorry, when you're writing down.
Yeah, so that's fine. I agree that I wish we can add that as an informative for the construction hours and sort of the parking. In relation to the overlooking, which, as mentioned, they do have permission for that rear dormer to be built and could be constructed, so that level of overlooking would be similar to the existing situation and the PD dormer, so don't consider there to be additional harm to those neighbours. I think the window you're referencing to is, it'll be the neighbour to the right. They've got the flank ground floor window, but as outlined in the report, that window is already is restricted, and the addition of the dormer would not result in significant loss of light compared to the existing situation.
Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll defer to Councillor White on this as to whether or not she feels it is a condition that would help the neighbours. But there is always the opportunity to have windows that are hinged from the bottom to stop people staring and overlooking, and or for them to be of slightly obscured glass. So I'm not sure if the neighbours' objections are predominantly on overlooking or the restriction of light, which I appreciate we can do nothing about. I have to say I hate the conversion of these properties. I love small Victorian villas, and I think it's a pity that so much could be done under permitted development, but that's a very personal opinion. But I do wonder if maybe a condition that hinges slightly differently might be beneficial.
Please.
So yeah, I have spoken with the agent and they have agreed that if that was suggested at the meeting, they would agree to a bottom hung opening window if that is what members wish to add. They wouldn't accept an obscurely glazed window though, so it would be bottom hung to allow ventilation into the room.
I'd certainly like to propose that. It looks as though Councillor White, I'm Wheeler, aren't I, would like to second that. I have to say, I think from the agent's point of view, that if we were to suggest it would only go ahead with glazing, that's surely a committee decision and not their decision. But I'll let that one rest for now.
Councillor White, are you supporting the request for a bottom-hung window?
I am.
Members, any other comments? And can I take it that that is agreeable to the committee? Nobody's objecting to it, so it's agreed then, yes. Any other comments to make on this one? Councillor Allaway.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just can't resist making a comment on it, I'm afraid, because, yeah, character-wise, that lump on the back of the house is totally out of character of that property. I think the picture you can see there from the back is from that property's back garden. If you went into the neighbour's back garden, you would see quite a lot of that big block on the back of the house. I mean, if they'd have done it as pitched roof, I think it'd be no problem. But the problem is, it's PD, you can't stop it. All they're asking for is an extra 1.5 metres, which is going to be neither here nor there. Thank you.
Yes, let's not go into the debate about PD, please, because we will be here all night and the rest of the weekend. Members, are they proposed and a seconder for the item as amended? Sorry, Councillor Tapper, you wanting to speak on this?
Yeah, Chair, thank you. I just wanted to ask a question. Can I have confirmation that this particular property does not fall within any defined conservation area?
No, the property isn't located within a conservation area.
Thank you. So what we're saying here about whether this is appropriate to the design of the area and other properties of a similar nature in the area is purely subjective. Thank you.
Did you want an answer to that, or are you making a statement?
If the officers are prepared to confirm or deny my assertion, I'd be willing for them to do so. Thank you.
I'll speak on their behalf, no. Right. Proposal as amended with the informative and the additional condition. Can I have a proposal and a seconder, please? Councillor Tapper, Councillor Wheeler, all those in agreement with the recommendation? No, it's not.
That's Councillor Barnett, Councillor Betton, Councillor Black, Councillor Gordon, Councillor Noble, Councillor Perry, Councillor Rasram, Councillor Tapper, Councillor Wheeler and Councillor Skipper.
Against? Abstention?
So against, that's Councillor White.
Sorry, Councillor White, I whisked past you there. You're against, are you? You're voting against? I'm voting against. Right.
I agree with the recommendations if it's passed.
You know what?
Did you get that? We're going with against. We're going with against, yes. And an abstention of the Councillor Alloway. Thank you, members. Just before we go away, the next planning meeting is on the 19th of January. That's all the main agenda. So thank you, members of the public that are, anybody is on YouTube. We'll be closing that down, and as we will be going into a confidential item, as we will be discussing items that are, I don't think the correct wording on there, that may incur additional costs on the occupiers and are not for public debate. So on that basis, when I find the right form of words, the press and public be excluded from the meeting during the consideration of agenda item 8, planning enforcement update, as it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1 and 3 of Part 1 of the Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, information relating to any individual, information relating to the financial or business affairs of a particular person, including the authority holding that information. Members, are you agreeable? Thank you. Seconded. All those in favour of agreement?